We have also what is called reconnaissance attacks, which is mainly used and in general is used as an intermediate step for other attacks. It is this kind of attacks are scoped to identify the victim's networks, which hosts are running in the network and visible at which intervals, at what intervals, then which hosts are running which services, what are the operating systems running on those hosts. And once the attacker has identified all of those things, then it knows the vulnerabilities. It knows the vulnerabilities. Because, for example, if I'm going to scan your network and identify that your web service runs on Apache 2.0 and then it runs on a Windows box, for example, then I can Windows, let's say 7, Windows 7, let's say with no patches. Then I'm going to be able to know at that point what are your vulnerabilities, because Apache 2.0 has its own vulnerabilities which are publicly known. Let's say Windows 7 has its own vulnerabilities which are publicly known, and at that point I can make use of those vulnerabilities and exploit them by sending specific attacks and then gain access to whatever I want. How do we mitigate those kinds of attacks? We have to understand how the attacks happen in the first place. So the attacker is going to either use some kind of ICMP probes in your network to see which services are reachable, which others are not reachable, how is the network configured to redirect or not to redirect. It can make use of proxy ARP services, CDP or LLDP to gather information about the systems in your network, or of course it can do port and application scanning to identify the operating system and the applications running on specific systems. So based on that, how to mitigate is clearly disable unneeded services, because on the border of your network towards the internet you don't need proxy ARP, you don't need CDP, you don't need LLDP or any kind of ICMP unreachable or redirect or massive reply being enabled. And for the port and application scanning, they have to deploy network and application firewall as proxies to intercept those kind of scanning and block them before they are effective. Like, why do you need also application firewalls? Because if you have the web service publicly available towards the internet, then when you connect to the web service, the server is going to state, hello world, I am running on Apache 2.0. But if you're going to implement a web application firewall instead of the web in front of the web service, then that specific web application firewall is going to actually intercept that scanning, that application scanning from the attacker, and can either choose not to reply at all, or if it chooses to reply, it can state nothing. So it's not gonna identify itself as being Apache or IIS or whatever other kind of web service is running on the real server. So as long as the attacker doesn't know what is the web service what is the web service run on top of and what is the operating system, then he has no idea what vulnerabilities can be exploited in the first place.